can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all here. It's nice to just sit, look out, and see all your smiling faces underneath those masks. I know they're ear to ear with smiles. This Buddhist thing, this practice stuff is it's really difficult. Has anyone found that? I thought I saw you shaking your head before. Yeah. What do you find difficult about it?
Everything.
Yeah. I was going to say other than everything.
You caught me at a very specific moment. Right now it's just letting go and not holding on to any anger specifically.
Oh, that's it. That's simple. Just letting go and not holding on to any anger. For anyone who didn't hear that, and you're having difficulty with that.
Just a little.
Yeah, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
This thing or person or place or whatever it is that you're angry about, how long has that been a part of your life? Couple years. The anger part, I should say.
The anger part this year.
This year. So the anger part is more recent, but the situation a few years.
It's funny because I wouldn't be actually at this practice if it wasn't for that person.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. So
maybe not funny to you, but
ironic.
Ironic's a better word. Yeah, so to paraphrase back what you said, that you wouldn't even be at this place or this practice if it weren't for the person that you're actually angry at. Pretty strange. You are not the first one to be here in those situations. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Of course.
It's a very difficult practice. Anyone else find this practice difficult? Now that you know I'm going to put you on the spot, you might be less likely to raise your hand, but it's challenging. And part of the reason it's challenging is because and I use the word forces in a more of a gentle way, but it requires is probably a better word. It really requires an exploration of yourself. And that can be very difficult and not so pleasant sometimes. And the more you sit here week in and week out and you listen to these words and teachings about being kind and compassionate and working with anger and moving through it and forgiveness and loving kindness and all these beautiful, gentle buzzwords in Buddhism, it then becomes really difficult to implement that in your day-to-day life. And very often for new people, there's this idea that Buddhism is going to be kind of this thing that's going to make everything better. And it does. I mean, it helps, but it just takes so gosh darn long sometimes. Because the challenges, the difficulties, the anger, the resentments, the frustrations, whatever those things are that you're dealing with in your life, they just don't ever go away. And even if you specifically work through this one situation of anger, and maybe tomorrow or 6 months from now or a year from now, you'd be like, I'm good with it now. There's going to be something else in the future. And that's what we get. We get a life that is filled with lots of beautiful, happy, pleasant, gentle, joyful moments, and a life that's filled with lots of challenges and difficulties. And that's why this practice is difficult, because, again, it requires us to look at what is the constant in each one of these situations. And it's like old school math problems, right? What's the common denominator in all of these situations? And that's us. And we can't escape that reality. So it becomes a practice where it says, wow, I really have to look at what is my role in everything that I'm doing? What is my role in the people and places and things in my life? And often when people begin learning about Buddhism, it might seem like it's this thing that you're going to escape to that's going to make everything better. And the more you dig into it, you begin to recognize, like, oh no, it's me. And that's what I have to begin to open up and learn and understand. And that's why that's one of the many reasons it is difficult and challenging. But I've found, at least in my own personal practice and working with enough people over the years, that if you continue to be patient with this practice, patient with yourself, things in your life will begin to really kind of open up and settle a little more than what you're used to. But unfortunately, it does require a constant effort. And that was the Buddha's last teaching. That's what he said before he died. Last thing he said, it was his time to go. He was 80 years old, and all of his disciples were sitting around, and they were afraid he was, going to be gone, and who was going to teach them now. And he said, I've been teaching you for 45 years. What more do I need to say? He said, now strive on with diligence and be a light unto yourself. Meaning, here's the teachings, right? You could hear loving kindness day in and day out and forgiveness day in and day out, but until we diligently put it into our lives, they're just concepts and ideas. So that's where the practice comes in, and that our own cultivation, our own diligence is really required. So I get it. It'd be much easier if somebody else could just do it all for us, make it simple. But as you'll soon figure out, it doesn't quite work that way, So be patient. So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. There's a couple things I'll tell you before we begin, for those who might be here for the first time or sitting for the first time. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten. Same thing if you're in a chair or a bench. Shoulders are relaxed. Back somewhat straight. Hands are on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means your leg hurts. I will guide us as we begin, and then we'll settle into some silence. And I'll say things periodically to wake you up or remind you that you're lost in thought. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important, with the practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us. He began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen, and you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your life. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice, as I mentioned earlier. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation, Buddhist practice is not an escape. It's direct perception into the present moment. And often that present moment is very pleasant, and often it's very unpleasant. And often it's just neutral. And this practice is learning to be with each moment as it arises. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice free. Sitting, breathing, and becoming aware of everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, wishing this would happen, wishing that would happen, hoping they do this, hoping they do that. And we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the present moment, life then often gets simpler. And in fact, not much changes except us and our mind. Once again, it comes back to us. I was just sitting here, not to embarrass you, put you on the spot, but right as I started to sit, I was like, man, I've been sitting with Pete for 18 years, right? 2000, well, at least that's when I first met you at the temple, 2003. And I was thinking man, what have I actually learned in all that time? And I don't know if it's that much. I hate to break it to you. I don't know if you really, this is just my experience with Buddhism, but I don't know that you really learn that much. But if I have any insight to share before we open up to questions, is I don't think of it so much as what have I learned, but almost the opposite of what have I unlearned. I guess you could call that learning, but to me, it's not, this practice isn't so much of an adding to, or, trying to make things better or greater or more it's not an adding to, it's a learning to be with, and if anything at all, really taking away. Not the stuff that we talked about on whatever Saturday, I think. Everyone was getting rid of all their shirts. But it's a taking away of and decreasing the ego and the pride and taking away the resentments and all that, the stuff that we're holding on to. It's a removing of all of that, or at least some of it. So, and it just keeps on going. So with that, I'll just pause and open up to questions. For me, I always really prefer just to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for that. Yep.
Do you think, if it's kind of unlearning thing, that Buddhism in 18 years is taking you more to who you truly are?
So the question was, if I'm saying that Buddhism is kind of an unlearning, do I feel that it's taken me closer to who I truly am? Is that the question, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. Now I'm going to talk about everything I've learned from this practice after I just told you it's really about unlearning. What I've learned from this practice is, in the ultimate sense, looking at very basic core Buddhist teachings, he taught non-self. Non-self is, in my experience with practicing that, is removing the story about who I think I am and just focusing on my actions. So what I've learned over the years from this practice is, and I get it. I mean, I've had the dialogues, those conversations, the philosophical approach of, be true to who you are, things like that. Like I understand all of those things, and what I'm about to say isn't denying that or thinking or suggesting that those things aren't beneficial or helpful, because often people are not true to themselves. And so I understand that on kind of a very surface or even deep, intimate level. But what I'm really getting at here is, there is no who I am. There's no concrete, definitive person that is Jeff. That's just a label and a story. For every one of us in this room, we all have our experiences, things we've done, places we've gone, people we've, experienced things with. We all have those stories. But those things aren't who we are. Those are experiences we've had. And so for me, what I've learned from this practice is that it's not about becoming closer to who I truly am. It's about working on each moment. What are my thoughts? What are my words? And what are my actions? That's my karma. And are my thoughts, words, and actions coming from a place of greed, anger, ignorance, which is the three poisons, as the Buddha taught, that causes our suffering? Or are my thoughts, words, and actions coming from a place of generosity, compassion, and wisdom? So, my initial response of, I don't know, is, as I'm sitting with this, is really because I spend zero, I spend 0 seconds trying to be like closer to who I truly am. That has nothing to do for me with this practice. Because if one tries to be closer to who you truly are, how do you pinpoint who you are? There are things you believe, there's things you act on, there's views you have, there's experiences you've had and will continue to have. But those things don't make you who you are. Those are just stories we use to identify ourselves, and stories that other people use to identify us. Okay? I am a big fan, and I just want to add this little kind of asterisk to it. I am a big fan, and I think it's really important for people to stay true to themselves, whatever that self story is. But I think that's very different from what I've learned from Buddhist practice. Does that make sense? Perfect. I got a so-so. That's great. I'll take that. That's a heavy question, and it's a heavy response. It's not a simple, what do you want to eat for dinner type of thing. Because our entire lives we spend building our story. our ego, our pride, everything we think we are and who we think we are and what we think we're supposed to do and what we think we're supposed to accomplish, our careers, our education, our relationships. I mean, all of that has just been one big story that we've been building. And we tell that story over and over and over again. And then all of that becomes this idea of who we think we are. And then we try to say, well, is all of that stuff I'm doing aligning with my true self? Every meme out there is about finding your true self. And again, the Buddhist teaching says there is no self. There is no permanent self that you can pinpoint and say, that's Jeff. So, definitely something to ponder for a long time. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions?
Yeah, it's kind of tying up that I was in traffic, or I was driving for 15 hours on Sunday. Towards the end of it, coming through LA, of course, the end. And I was just kind of thinking about what was going on, and I was like, I can't say that I'm stuck in traffic. I can only say that I am traffic.
Yeah, it's your
Or
fault.
else it's my road, and everyone else needs to get out of the way.
Correct. Yeah, you could write books on traffic and Buddhism, and Dharma. Like that whole traffic was your fault, But that's, I think, part of everything we do in our lives is to recognize that we are a part of everything that's occurring. Right? All of us in here is no different than all of us in traffic. We're just in one physical location. The difference is, like you said, even if you look at the way you told the story, I had a 15-hour drive on Sunday. I ended up in LA and traffic. Like those three things sound like a nightmare. Right? But if we try to stay present with it, it's each moment I'm just here. So all of us sitting here, well, you expected to come here and sit and, have an hour of just being relatively quiet and hopefully somewhat pleasant. So this is meeting everything that you wanted. Most people don't want 15-hour drives, LA traffic, and being stuck. But it's just you there, and it's you here. Same thing. So it's our perception of that. Yeah. Thanks. Other thoughts, questions?
So I have a couple different things, so I apologize if it's all over the place. But I was kind of curious if Buddhist followers or disciples were as confused as us.
That's such a great question.
Because
I've never heard that before. Were Buddhist followers just as confused as us? Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to get that part out.
Because we are so conditioned, so deeply conditioned, and especially, with our technological information age, there's just stuff constantly going in.
Yeah.
But maybe they were closer to their true self. And for me in my journey, getting to this true self is a good stepping stone
Yes.
towards
Yes.
the being present. So I am curious if you take somebody that is a little bit more unconditioned and not socialized in the ways that we are.
Sure.
Can they skip a couple steps?
Yeah. So, and I'm glad, and I just wanted to reiterate again, but I think hopefully my point was clear. That's why I kind of added the asterisk because I don't know, I make up numbers all the time, but like 90% of the people that show up to meditation Buddhist stuff show up because they're trying to get closer to their true self.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting up here saying, what self? But that's what the Buddha taught. But again, I don't want to downplay the importance of that because so many people spend their lives in misery because they don't feel that they're aligned with their true self. So I fully 100% support that that piece of it. It is critically important. But as you get closer to whatever that true self that you think you're getting closer to, as you continue to get closer to it, then try adding in this whole little Buddhist piece of like, okay, well, there's no self. So what am I getting closer to? Or maybe think of it as I'm just moving away from all the other stuff that is not how I want to be living my life and is not true with who I am or what I believe in. Does that make sense? As opposed to like finally getting to like this goal of like, yep, I made it. This is my true self. That's what I'm trying to caution people from doing, is thinking that there's some like finish line. There's not, right? So the other part about, is it, and this question is pretty common, is it harder today? You're talking India 2,500 years ago, they didn't have iPhones, but they had a lot. So I think that, again, only from what I've read and learned, again, there's that learning stuff, they were just as confused as we are without an iPhone, right? Lucky them. I think it's also important to understand, and I know you've probably heard this or know this, but for anyone who might not, the Buddha, he was a prince. So he didn't have the technology and all the things, but whatever was comparable back then to what we have today, he had it all. He had all the wealth, all the money, all the riches, all the women, he had everything. He was a prince in India 2,500 years ago. His life was probably way more complicated and complex and challenging. That's not fair for me to say that, but than ours. So yes, I believe that they were just as confused. I don't think that it was any simpler than it is now, necessarily. It's just different. Also, I think it's important to understand that, when the Buddha, as the story goes, when he sat under the Bodhi tree for 21 days and he had this, awakening, and the story is that Brahma came down, the Hindu god, because he originally thought like, well, nobody's going to understand this stuff, right? He had this realization into the true nature of reality. And he thought, well, nobody's going to understand this. And the kind of famous line is, Brahma came down and said, there are people out there with little dust in their eye. Go teach. They'll get it. So there were people then who were just as lost and confused. And there were people just like they are today. And there were people then that were maybe a little bit closer to working through some of this stuff, just like today. So.
That helps, thank you.
Yeah, sure. And the reality is, like, even if the response was, yeah, it was simple for them, that still doesn't change here we are. The fact that I would say to you they had no iPhone doesn't mean, or whatever phone, doesn't mean we're going to get rid of all that. So even if it was simpler back then, here we are. So, yeah.
Kind of just a fun thing to compare.
Sure. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff to read if you look at like, what was his life actually like? Not kind of the sutras so much, or, the beautiful Pema Chodron books and Thich Nhat Hanh and Dalai Lama's but like, what was his life actually like? And he was a dude with a lot of stuff. Yeah. Other questions?
Okay. I know that one of the saying about Dharma bombs, right, is think good thoughts, do good deeds, say good things.
Close enough. That works.
What about bad thoughts?
What about? Okay, go ahead.
because, bad thoughts come into my head. And, I don't know exactly why. I kind of consider them like inappropriate, things I'm trying to unlearn, like you say. And, sometimes they're thoughts that are firing off like about people that I don't even know,
Mm-hmm.
that I see. And I'm wondering about the concept of goodwill. And one thing I've been doing is when I realize that this thought is coming in, I try to kind of like throw goodwill at that person. Is that something that is going to be, an answer to maybe lessening this hostility towards, the outside world?
The world,
For whatever reason, it's there, and maybe eventually it will lessen. It kind of like, I guess I'd say, kind of like the 12-step fake it till you make it
Mm-hmm.
concept.
Oh, I'm with you.
Anyway, I was just kind of anyone's thoughts on this.
Yeah.
It's, something that, it's kind of shameful to admit that, yes, I'm trying to lead a good life, but all kinds of crazy bad thoughts
Yeah.
come into my head. And I
Yeah.
don't know, what's up with that exactly.
Sure.
And I'm just trying to deal with it without being, uncompassionate.
Yes. Great question. Thank you for sharing all that. To kind of paraphrase it or retell back for our millions of YouTube followers is as you said, kind of the Dharma Bum thing is think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds, which I learned from my first master teacher, Venerable Yizhur. And that was what she always said as a teaching. She simplified Buddhist teachings to that. Think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. So that's where that comes from. As a practitioner, and all I can ever speak about is my own experience, I would say probably every single day, I have more bad thoughts than I do good thoughts. Without a doubt. You mentioned the word shame. I want to address that not quickly, but I want to make sure I address that for you or for anybody. Well, anyone in here have bad thoughts all day long? Okay, if you don't, you're lying, right? So we have bad thoughts, maybe not all day long, right? Maybe some of you are so pure-headed and phenomenal in that regard, right? But we all have bad thoughts. Really important to not apply shame. And whether you meant it this way or not, I just still want to address it. Because often we can start to learn about Buddhist practice and we can hear think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds when we just spend 7 hours all day long being pissed off and thinking mean things. And then we come here and someone's like, think good thoughts. And you're like, I'm and then it becomes this like, I'm failing, I'm losing, I can't do this stuff. And then we quit and we give up and we just get stuck in this vicious cycle of being mean, angry, pissed off people, right? I suggest not having shame or guilt or anger towards yourself for having bad thoughts. You've been having bad thoughts, or whoever's been having bad thoughts, a long time. Buddhist classes for 6 months or 6 years doesn't take away a lifetime filled of bad thoughts. One of the reasons we have so many bad thoughts is because we've been having them for so long, right? You with me so far? I'm kind of jumping around here, but I'm trying to follow a little bit the jumping of the question or what you shared. Another thing I want to share is a story that some of you may have heard, but I think it really addresses this question. This was years ago, doesn't matter, 10, 12 years ago, and there was a 20-year-old kid was doing meditation every week at KPBS up at San Diego State campus. And 20-year-old intern, and he came into meditation. And this was maybe like his third week of doing meditation with our little group there. And he came up to me after or before, I don't remember. And he said, Jeff, I think I figured out how this meditation, can help. I said, how's that? And he said, well, I was at a party Friday night, and there was this guy, and this guy was talking to my girlfriend, and I was getting really angry. Again, 20-year-old kid. And he said, I realized I should probably take some deep breaths and walk away. I said, that's great, Cole. What happened? And he said, I hit him. And I looked at him and I said, congratulations. That's progress. And he was really confused. He was like, Jeff, I hit the guy, I got into a fight. I said, yes, but there was a moment that you realized there was another way to handle that situation. You did not handle it another way. But 4 weeks earlier, he never would have thought there was another choice. Right? Now, how long you been around this Buddhist stuff? Yeah.
Couple years.
Couple years. So a couple years plus a day. You wouldn't have been asking the question you're asking right now, which says to me, you're on the right path. This doesn't solve your problem. Nothing in Buddhism solves your problems. But if nothing else, hopefully it will encourage you even more so, and like really deepen your cultivation, deepen the effort, deepen the diligence, the effort really, really strongly to recognize that here you are a couple years and a day. And even in the way you started to ask the question, you're like, okay, it's like, here it goes. It's like you've been holding that question in for 2 years or 2 months or whatever. Good. You're getting there. The awareness is key. Right? What's that expression? Rome wasn't built in a day? That's an expression, right? I didn't just make that up. Right. It's hard to tell with the mask. People smiling or they're just staring at me like, what are you talking about? Or both, maybe. But you're on the right path. And, for me, a great metaphor is that, like, if you spend your whole life doing a lot of bad stuff, which, myself and some others maybe have done, and then you spend a handful of years over here, like, here's your forest, whole acres and acres and acres of huge trees of karma that we have created with body, speech, and mind that isn't so good. And then we got a couple little flower pots over here. They're small, they're cute, they're pretty. We're watering them every day. But that forest is still there. So continue to be patient, continue to practice. And I think the last example you gave of kind of the fake it till you make it, I kind of laughed at that because I've been doing that with this practice for a long time. But the diligence has to be there. The genuine effort has to be there. I think the honesty, like being very authentic and real with yourself, like to be able to say, like for me, to be able to say, yeah, I have more bad thoughts all day long than good thoughts. Absolutely 100% truth. But do you act on those thoughts? That's the question. And by bad, it's a loose kind of word, really, but just thoughts that are not so pleasant, not so beneficial, not so helpful. Thoughts that are filled with greed or anger, ignorance, versus thoughts that are filled with generosity, compassion, wisdom. Okay. Greedy, angry, ignorant thoughts, generosity, compassion, wisdom thoughts. Which do you have more of? Most people, it's the greedy, angry, ignorant ones. So then the question is, can we not act on those? Can we at least work on recognizing the thought, not saying it, and then not acting on it? That's the practice. Is that helpful at all?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any final thoughts before we close? All right. So we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 4 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and to their family and friends who continue to suffer to this day. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you all head out to be nice, kind, wonderful people all night long. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this little temple almost 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. So every night we have different practices going on. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. We shut down for 16 months completely, built a whole online virtual temple. So all of that is still running. We now meet in person as well. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. I do Tuesday night here. Alex does Wednesday. It's a metta, loving kindness practice. And Travis does the Thursday night Dharma Bum Basics and meditation. Everything else is either on YouTube or Zoom. We have 2 recovery groups that meet here Tuesday night downstairs and Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Right now, the only 2 classes that require RSVP, the Saturday morning meditation, 11 a.m., and the Tuesday night recovery Sangha. Other than that, you can just show up. We also sit Monday through Friday, 8 and 8:30. It's not a class. There's no one leading or talking. It's just someone hits about 8, it's about 8:25, and then that repeats at 8:30. So it's just 2 silent sits if you ever want to just come sit and get quiet in the morning. That's available. And then the temple closes all day, and then it opens up again in the evening for class. Same thing, Buddha for You, closed pretty much all day, open on the weekends, Saturday, Sunday, 12 to 3, and then also an hour before class. Other than that, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for kind of following the guidelines we've put in place just to keep everybody here feeling safe and comfortable. We typically, pre-pandemic, would see about 600 to 800 people a week through this place. And that's a lot of people to cram into a small space. So we've done our best to kind of limit that on some level, just like I said, to keep people who are coming here comfortable coming here. So so thanks all. Be well, good luck, and we'll see you soon. Good to see you, dude. It's funny, hang on. Let me just stop that before our whole